Hello learners, welcome back to the course on learning and development in organization. We move to the second part of what we are discussing, diagnostic questionnaires for senior managers. I'm Dr. Abraham Cyril Issac. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Business, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. So the past few lectures, especially in this module, we are looking into the diagnostic approaches for learning and development. And we started with the diagnostic approaches, specifically the questionnaires assessment, scales, whatever you can call it. In the previous lecture, we looked into the senior managers, some of the typical assessment mechanisms. Today, we discuss on the same. We continue looking into some of the most key assessment criteria, assessment tools specifically, some of the most popular ones. We'll try to actually have a discussion on that. Some of them you might already know, some of them might be new to you. So let's understand this in a more deeper way. So today's thought would be, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So this is particularly what I would like to tell you all in the beginning, that when we are looking to initiate a process, many a time, we call it being perfectionist. Sometimes we wait for the right moment to come, then we'll start doing it. But maybe it so happens that the right moment never comes itself. So there might be a possibility that you don't have to wait for the right moment. You don't have to be great to start. You have to just start. And then things can get added up and you can become great at a later point in time. So let's start today's discussion by focusing on the most popular diagnostic tool, which is the balance scorecard. When we look into the balance scorecard, it helps a lot in strategic thinking and organizational alignment. You look into the field of strategy in management, you look into the field of human resource management, both disciplines, they equally use this balance scorecard as a diagnostic tool. So these assessments typically are very important. They evaluate how effectively a senior leader aligns their team, division or business unit with a broader organizational strategy. So they uncover whether strategic priorities are clearly communicated, they are measured and executed at all levels. So what is this balance scorecard? Let's look into that. When we look into balance scorecard, BSc, it's a diagnostic tool. It's a structured tool which is used to assess how effectively an organization or maybe even a specific team or business unit aligns its operation and performance metrics with the strategic goals. So please note, it was developed by Robert Kaplan and David Norton. The balance scorecard provides a comprehensive view of organizational health beyond traditional financial measures. So typically, if you ask me, it breaks performance into four interrelated perspectives. One is financial, second is customer, third is internal process, and the fourth one is learning and growth. So when you look into the financial quarter, how do we look to the shareholders? This is the question that is relevant. When you look into the quarter of customer, how do customers see us? The perception of customers. The third element, which is internal process, the question would be, what must we excel at? What is our USP? And finally, in learning and growth, we'll look into how can we improve and create value. So typically, this balance scorecard identifies strategic misalignment. Let's say if I have to take an example, let's say when a KPI or reward behavior that doesn't support long-term goal, then there's a strategic misalignment. So it helps clarify the line of sight from strategy to execution, and it provides a structure for performance conversation with teams. And finally, it encourages balance, ensuring financial success that isn't pursued at the expense of, let's say, employee development or even customer satisfaction. So typically, this is a tool which builds accountability around leading indicators, not just the lagging ones. So if you look into this balanced scorecard, typical version, you will see that when you talk about the financial aspect, the question I have already asked is with respect to the domain. How do we look to the shareholders? The focus would be the financial performance of the business. So we are interested in the revenue, in the OPEX, the net profit part. These are the KPIs here when we talk about the finance. When we talk about the customer, the KPIs are level of returns, lifetime value, and customer satisfaction. So customer satisfaction happens to be the focus here. When you look into the internal process, the efficiency of the business is the focus. You look into, let's say, some machine downtime, inventory level, unit cost, the production cost, all these are the KPIs. And finally, when you're looking into the learning and growth segment, internal knowledge and innovation becomes significant. So the KPIs would be employee retention, level of new product ideas, or even employee satisfaction. Now let's look into the Organizational Health Index, OHI index by McKinsey. Organizational Health Index, OHI, developed by McKinsey and Company, is a comprehensive diagnostic tool used to measure an organization's ability to align, execute, and renew itself over time. So essentially, how well it performs not just today, but how ready it is to sustain performance in the future. This is the typical question. So it defines organizational health as a combination of culture, performance, leadership behaviors, and institutional capabilities, and compares your organization's health with global benchmarks from McKinsey's proprietary database. So it looks into the typical 9 dimensions of organizational health. It can be, let's say, direction. Talk about the direction, talk about the shared vision, strategic clarity, employee involvement, etc. You look into the second aspect, which is leadership. The types of the leadership, authoritative, consultative, whether it's supportive, challenging, all these typical aspects will have an impact on the Organizational Health Index. The third one would be the culture and the climate, whether it is open, trusting type climate, or it is internally competitive, operationally disciplined type of climate, or is it creative and entrepreneurial. Then we have the fourth element, which is accountability. You look into the role clarity, the performance contracts, consequence management, and the personal ownership, which comes under accountability. So what is the ownership, the need for belongingness, the belongingness or the ownership that is there, which typically adds on to accountability and which typically contributes to the Organizational Health Index. Then you have another significant dimension, which is coordination and control. So all the people performance review, all the typical aspects of operational management, all the typical aspects of financial management, all the typical aspects of professional standards and risk management, they come under the coordination and control. You have the capabilities next, where we look into talent acquisition, you look into talent development, you look into the process-based capabilities, you look into outsourced expertise. Then the seventh dimension would be motivation. What are the meaningful values? What are the inspirational, or who are the inspirational leaders? What are the typical career opportunities that are available? What are the typical financial incentives that are available? What are the rewards and recognition that is available for you? This is typically covered under the seventh dimension, which is motivation. Then you have the external orientation, where the focus is on customer. It is all about competitive insight. It is all about business partnership, government and community relationships. And finally, you have innovation and learning, that is top-down innovation. It could be bottom-up innovation, it could be knowledge sharing, it could be capturing external ideas. So all those elements which contribute to innovation and learning subsequently contribute to the Organizational Health Index, OHI. Now let's move into Strategic Alignment Model, which is also called a SAM. The strategic alignment model is also a diagnostic and planning framework developed by Henderson and Venkatraman to assess how well an organization's, let's say, business strategy, IT strategy, infrastructure and organizational processes are aligned to drive performance. Although it originated in the context of IT alignment, this strategic alignment model SAM, it has evolved into a broader strategic tool, especially used for senior leaders who are our point of consideration today, navigating transformation, digital innovation or structural change. So, the model includes 4 key domains grouped into 2 dimensions. One is this strategic fit, that is external versus internal. So, what is a business strategy? That would be external. What are the organizational infrastructure and process? That will be internal. Look into the functional integration, that is business versus IT. You have the IT strategy, which is external, IT infrastructure and process, which is internal. When we look into typically these aspects, the SAM model, the strategic alignment model, looks into 4 components which interact across 4 alignment perspectives. So, in front of you, you have these perspectives. What are the typical focus? And I have also added one example at the application level for your easy understanding. So, let us start with the perspective. When we look into the strategic execution part, as the first perspective, the focus is on aligning IT and operations to support business strategies. So, ensuring HR and tech systems support growth in a new market, that would be a typical example for strategy execution. If you look into technology transformation, the focus would be essentially using IT strategy to enable a new business direction. So, what would be a typical example? Implementing AI tools, let's say, to support a shift to the digital services can be a typical example. The third factor could be, let's say, competitive potential. The focus would be leveraging emerging tech to drive business innovation. That could be the focus, and an example could be using the analytics, the data analytics, to create a new customer segment maybe altogether. Then the fourth aspect would be the service level. The focus again would be aligning internal IT, HR, operations to optimize the performance. So, what can be an example? Streamlining, let's say, the ERP systems to reduce the inefficiencies can be a typical example. So, if you understand this strategic alignment model, what is exactly happening is that there are external elements, there are internal factors, then there is business domain, and let's say as an example IT domain. So, business strategy, IT strategy, it goes to information systems, infrastructure and processes, then goes to organizational infrastructure and process. So, it is a different movement altogether within the external and the internal parameters within the business domain and the IT domain. Now, let us look into team effectiveness and culture diagnostics. These tools, if you ask me, they evaluate the health, they evaluate the cohesion and productivity of leadership or cross-functional teams. So, typically they focus on interpersonal trust, they focus on psychological safety, they focus on shared accountability and decision-making effectiveness. So, there are 5 dysfunctions of a team assessment, and this is what I have taken from the Patrick Lencioni's model, the 5 dysfunctions of a team assessment. So, you will see that the key areas will have absence of trust, will have fear of conflict, will have lack of commitment, will have avoidance of accountability, will have also inattention to results. So, the 5 dysfunctions of a team assessment is typically designed to evaluate and address the common team issues. So, it helps the teams understand areas where they are struggling and identify strategies for improvement. So, the assessments focuses on 5 areas: absence of trust, fear of conflict, let us say lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and even inattentions to results. So, when you look into these dysfunctions, if you look into the first factor, team members lack vulnerability and are hesitant to admit weakness or ask for help. So, this typically leads to a lack of psychological safety and it hinders open communication. Then there is fear of conflict. The team avoids productive, healthy debate and instead resorts to artificial harmony, which stifles innovation, if you ask me, and even it stifles the critical thinking process. Then the third aspect, lack of commitment. Without open conflicts, I can tell categorically, team members may not be fully engaged in decisions, leading to a lack of buy-in and commitment to plans. The fourth aspect is avoidance of accountability. When team members are not accountable for their actions, they may not be held responsible for the performance, leading to a lack of ownership. And finally, you have inattention to results. That is, that individual goals and personal agendas take precedence over the team's collective success, undermining the team's ability to achieve its objectives typically. Now, when you look into the typical team assessment part, you will see that there is a scale, and these are the items. I don't want to detail it out, it's in front of your eyes, so you can just look into the typical items. What I want you to focus is, look into the scale, understand what these items are actually communicating. So, they might be looking into these dysfunctions, these areas of focus, and see how well structured and how validated they are in collecting the data. So, this is a particular team assessment scale. Now, let us move into Gallup. Gallup's Q12 engagement survey is one of the most widely researched and validated tools, if you ask me, for measuring the employee engagement part. So, you look into this Gallup Q12 engagement survey. It was developed by Gallup after analyzing over, I think, around 30 million employee responses globally. So, the Q12 identifies the 12 key elements of employee engagement that are most strongly linked to performance outcomes such as productivity, profitability, retention, safety, and customer satisfaction. So, when you look into this Gallup's Q12 questions, they are broken into 4 key areas of engagement. Like, if I start from the bottom of the pyramid, what do I get? This is the basic need. So, somewhere you can relate it to the hierarchy of needs of Maslow. Individual contribution, what do I actually give? So, this is particularly the basic need, then the individual contribution, then you have do I belong, the teamwork part, and finally the growth part, how do we grow? So, this is where you epitomize the growth mindset altogether. So, let's say if I can relate to the questions, opportunities to learn and grow, progress in last 6 months, they come under the growth aspect. I have a best friend at work, co-workers committed to quality, all those items that come under teamwork. Someone encourages my development, or supervisor at work cares about me, recognition during the last few time period, do what I do best every day. Then it's all about individual contribution. And finally, if you look into, I have materials and equipment, I know what is expected of me, it's more about the basic needs. So, what we can typically see is that there is a holistic approach right from basic needs all the way to creating a growth mindset. Now, let's understand this culture lamp, glint, pecan, some of the critical developments that are happening in team effectiveness and cultural diagnostics. Again, I have detailed all these tools in the learning module in the AI in HRM course. But coming to this particular discussion, continuous team feedback platforms that assess team sentiment, leadership, impact, and organizational culture alignment are coming under the ambit of these particular tools. So, you look into the change readiness and agility diagnostics. So, these diagnostic assess how ready and capable a leader or team is to navigate organizational change, transformation, or disruption. So, they help identify risk factors, change fatigue, or leadership misalignment with adaptive behaviors. You look into the typical change style factor. It's a leadership assessment designed to measure an individual's preferred style in approaching and addressing change. This is important. Approaching and addressing change. So, let's say the purpose of this assessment is to determine one's preferences in initiating and dealing with situations in the workplace that concern change. So, the results of this tool place the individual on a continuum scale with 3 style preferences. Let's say over and above from conserver to originator. So, somewhere in between you have pragmatist. So, conservers is someone at one end of the spectrum who prefers gradual change with a clear structure and has difficulty dealing with the unknown. Pragmatists, they like to explore change structure while supporting organizational functional changes. So, pragmatists have an easier time dealing with both the conserver and the originator styles. So, each of these styles is more personality influenced than situation influenced. And finally, you have originator. Originators are on the other side of the continuum where these individuals want to challenge the change structure and take a front seat in radicalizing approach. So, typically the assessment provides leaders of all levels with insights into personal preferences for managing through change. It provides context for how those around them might perceive and respond to their preferred style. So, this creates an appreciation for the change style diversity. Now, let us look into another significant model which is called as ADKAR Readiness Assessment. You look into ADKAR. A is all about being aware, D is desire, K is knowledge, A is the ability part and R is reinforcement. Let us look into this. An ADKAR Readiness Assessment uses the ADKAR model, a change management framework, to evaluate how ready individuals or organizations are to embrace a specific change. So, many a time in learning and development, in the implementation of AI in HR, all these aspects, one significant aspect is the inertia to change. So, one thing that is critical with respect to the ADKAR model and models like this is that they are looking into the possibility of change, and this possibility of change will not be there unless and until there is a readiness to change. So, we look into this learning and development. We have seen across our initial few modules that inertia, that is, there is always a resistance to change or resistance to jump into learning and development program. Similarly, some technological advancements are happening. I have categorically discussed this in the AI in HRM course also, that the readiness or the availability and the readiness to use that particular technology. These are two different aspects. Many a time there might be technology that is available, but you are not ready to use it. Many a time what happens is that you are in a position to somehow resist the change, and this is where models like ADKAR Readiness Assessment becomes critical. Let's say the organization is coming out with a very interesting and one of the most effective plans to enhance the employee engagement. As a hypothetical example, let me state this. But then once it is floated, there are hardly people who are registering it, or hardly people who are trying to attend the same. So, what typically is going in the background is that there is a resistance to change. There is a resistance to intervention mechanism. So, this is what is typically captured. So, if you want to look into the effectiveness of learning and development program, it should ideally happen. That's why the initial theme that we have to start looking into the concept or start doing, so that one day we will become great. So, when you are looking into this resistance to change, this is the first and the foremost barrier in an organization that comes to you when it is all about learning and development. Let's look into this ADKAR model in detail. When we look into the awareness part, typically you will see that individuals understand the need for change and the reasons behind it. So, this is critical with respect to the awareness part. So, what is and isn't working in an organization? What are the available options that are there with you? Communicate if there is a problem and focus attention on the most important reasons to change. When you talk about the desire, it's all about individuals who are motivated to support the change and want it to succeed. So you look into communicating benefits for adoption of Scrum. That could be taken as an example, or identify the risks involved in that, build momentum, address the fears if there are any. So all these aspects would come under the contemplation part, which is the desire. Then you have the preparation part, where knowledge comes into picture. So individuals have the necessary information and understanding about the new processes or procedures. So learn new technical skills, learn to think as a team, learn how to time box, share information, set reasonable targets. All these aspects come under the preparation angle, that is knowledge. And then you have the action part, which is all about ability, where individuals possess the skills and competencies to perform new tasks or behavior. So you look into emptying a suitable governance framework, training the basics, starting small. Don't do it by stealth, and adjust process that touch the Scrum teams. This can be taken as an example in ability part. Then you have the reinforcement under the maintenance. So individuals receive ongoing support and encouragement to sustain the new behavior. So engage a Scrum coach, identify champions as part of the example of the Scrum, share Scrum experience, learn from early mistakes. So this typically explain what the ADKAR model is all about. Now let's look into the VUCA. What is the VUCA agility assessment? VUCA evaluates leaders' capability in navigating volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. Many of you might already have come across this VUCA as a lexicon, as a terminology. This is the VUCA agility assessment. So it evaluates these aspects. It measures adaptive thinking, emotional resilience, risk tolerance and speed of response. So if you ask me what is this model all about, it's all about volatility. A key aspect of your work is subject to major unpredictable peaks and troughs. Then you have uncertainty. The future is unknown, but the external events are likely to be impactful. That's the uncertainty part. Then you have complexity. Many interconnected factors influence one another in ways that are challenging to model confidently. And then you have ambiguity, that is conflicting, noisy or insufficient data, which makes it difficult to assess what's really going on. Then we look into the agile leadership compass, or we call it the agile profile. The leadership agility compass is a practical tool developed by ChangeWise. So based on a research from, I think, the book Leadership Agility. So it helps leaders improve the effectiveness of any initiative, whether it's a driving change, whether it is improving teams, or whether it's all about leading key conversations. So the compass identifies 4 key territories that leaders must attend to for success. One is context setting agility. Step back to see the broader strategic environment. Anticipate changes, prioritize initiatives and clarify the desired outcomes in context setting agility. The second aspect would be the stakeholder agility. Identify the key stakeholders, understand their perspectives and work toward alignment and engagement. Then you have creative agility. Diagnose the root cause, root issues and develop innovative solutions, especially for complex, non-routine problems. And then you have the self-leadership agility. Reflect on your own leadership, your strengths, gaps and development. Regular self-reflection enhances growth and effectiveness. So each compass point, if you look carefully, represents a type of agility that helps leaders gain perspective and take informed action. So the model encourages stepping back, seeing more clearly and leading more effectively. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier lectures also, we'll try to look into some of the clear cases that has helped the world of practice in getting some change with respect to learning and development. So, we'll today discuss on the Tata Steel's strategic success through what we have already understood, the balanced scorecard implementation. So, to set the overview, please understand, for the people who don't know, many of you would already know that Tata Steel is one of India's foremost steel producers. They adopted the balanced scorecard framework to better synchronize its various operations and drive sustainable growth across multiple dimensions, just beyond the financial performance. So the challenges that were there included, with operations, with operations spread across numerous locations and business units, the company actually sought a comprehensive performance management system that would actually, align individual and departmental efforts with the overall corporate strategies, or provide the visibility into key success factors beyond the profit margins, and foster accountability and strategic focus throughout the organization. Look into the balanced scorecard approach. You will see that Tata Steel structured its strategy around the 4 main perspectives, each designed to capture critical performance areas with measurable indicators and focused initiatives. So the first one was the financial perspective, driving profitability and cost control. So to secure long-term value for shareholders while maintaining operational cost efficiency. So this EBITDA, so this EBITDA margin, EBITDA, what we informally call it, or even the return on capital employed, ROCE, cost per ton of steel produced. So what are the key initiatives? It's all about streamlining, procurement and logistics to reduce cost. It was all about leveraging automation to enhance operational leverage. It was all about deploying live financial dashboards to monitor performance in real time. The second factor was with respect to the customer perspective or the customer orientation, ensuring quality and reliability. So the goal was to establish Tata Steel as the preferred supplier by consistently meeting quality and delivery expectations. So you had the key metrics part, which looked into the delivery, punctuality, customer satisfaction ratings, defect and rejection rates. So the key initiatives included implementing CRM systems for better account management, customizing supply chain processes for automotive steel clients, utilizing the smart technology for faster resolution of customer issues. Then you had the operational excellence, enhancing the efficiency and agility. So there the goal was to enhance the efficiency, improve the process efficiency typically by minimizing the waste and the downtime. So the key metrics included production cycle time, equipment downtime and scrap and waste percentage. So what were the initiatives that took the operational excellence seriously? Was adopting Lean Six Sigma methodologies, integrating IoT tools for predictive maintenance, automating key production bottlenecks across the facilities. Then you have the fourth aspect, which is more about the innovation, typically the talent aspect, cultivating skills and new ideas. You have the goal as to develop the skills and drive innovation part. The metrics included training hours, the mean of that, innovation outcomes, be it new patents, process improvements, employee engagement scores, etc. Then the key initiatives were establishing a digital learning platform for upskilling, organizing innovation challenges to spur the creativity, and creating, let's say, clear career progression pathways that aligned with the strategy. So typically, what was the impact? Please note, the balanced scorecard framework helped Tata Steel integrate the strategic priorities at every level. So improving the operational efficiency, improving the customer loyalty that was there within the organization, and boosting the employee development altogether. So when you look into the impact this BSE balanced scorecard had, it is quite impressive. So continuous monitoring, review cycles, ensure that strategies remain relevant and the execution was perfect and it was critically planned and done in a very systematic manner. So you look into the balance scorecard. This is not just a fancy tool, I would use the word, just to have some impact on your organizational performance. You can just quote that yes, this organization uses this particular tool. No, more than that, it has certain impact. It creates its own influence on the measurement paradigm altogether, and this is what typically this case study of Tata Steel has pointed out. So now when you look into typically what we have seen in this particular lecture is a set of tools which helps us, aids us in assessment. So in previous lecture and this one, we have tried to look into the senior management, how we can effectively understand the nuances of what they think, what they do, and how they behave in terms of learning and development programs, how they are modeled, how they are wired, and can we rewire them in executing more effective learning and development programs. This is why we had a clear discussion on the different diagnostic tools which can actually tell what is the personality that we are talking about, what is the leadership ability of the individual that we are talking about, what are the competencies that are available. All these aspects together will give us a clear idea about where we are going with respect to the learning and development within the organization. Thank you for listening to me patiently. We'll come up with more details of learning and development in the next class. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.